Welcome to GothCast. I'm Dr. Sanders, and today I am much more colorful than usual. That was just totally by accident. I just happened to pick things that have a lot of colors, surprisingly. But anyway, remember last year when I reviewed the Addams Family in Evilution and talked about the comic strip and the beginnings of the Addams Families in the 1930s? Well, today is what you can think of as the second part of that, and I'll finally be taking a look at the Addams Family 1960s television show. Now, it took me a long time to get to this review because I didn't want to miss anything when preparing this. If I missed a piece of trivia or something I really liked, I would have been bummed if I released the review and then it was missing it. So this review, I feel, really encompasses my thoughts about this show, and I watched every single episode. That is another one of the contributing factors is I sat and watched all 64 episodes of this. So I hope you really enjoy this look into a classic television show, and I hope you enjoy.
A new Addams Family movie was recently announced and given a release date, October 11th, 2019. But let's take a second look at my recent Crow review. I saw recently in the news that the Crow remake or reinvention or whatever it's going to be finally has a release date, October 11th, 2019. That's right, if both of these movies release on time, then we will have a new Crow and a new Addams Family film released on the same day next year. It's even stranger that these are both older franchises that haven't had a release in years. What are the chances of that? This one is going to be animated, and the designs strongly resemble the original comics. I'm always looking forward to any new Addams Family content, even though the company controlling the rights have made some interesting decisions in recent years. But following my review of the original Addams Family comics, it only seems fitting to take a look at the 1964 television show. If you're like me, then you remember watching reruns of it throughout the decades. Even today, it's still showing on certain stations. Very few shows have that much longevity. Really, when people think of classic spooky TV, there's three shows that come to mind: The Munsters, Dark Shadows, and The Addams Family. Some people prefer The Munsters, some side with Addams, and people who want to watch an insane amount of episodes watch Dark Shadows. But before I get into reviewing the show, let's talk about how the series came about. The show was originally developed for the ABC network in 1964, but required a lot of expanding on the original comic panels. The network actually went directly to Charles Addams, who loved the idea and fleshed out the characters' backgrounds and personalities. They were officially cemented into the family of fright we love. Morticia and Gomez are happily married with their two children, Wednesday and Pugsley. They live with Morticia's Uncle Fester and Gomez's mother, Grandmama Addams. They are assisted by their butler Lurch and the disembodied hand Thing, who appears randomly to help out. One of the biggest changes is obviously that Thing is now only characterized as a hand and forearm, whereas in the comics, he was an actual physical person or being or whatever an Addams family member is. As the franchise continued, we would see some changes in the relationships, but the basic idea Addams came up with continues to this day. The other thing that continues to this day is the Addams Family show being compared to The Munsters. The Munsters was actually developed by CBS as a result of them hearing about the upcoming Addams show. The two actually ended up debuting within 1 week of each other, giving the mainstream TV audience the spooky families it never knew it needed. Both shows ran for only 2 years and had only 2 seasons. Now, with 2 seasons, there must be a very small amount of episodes, right? Not at all. There is a total of 64 episodes that were produced in just 2 years. And that is a crazy amount to produce by today's standards. But does the show hold up today? I think so. Right off the bat, some people are not going to be entertained by it simply because it's black and white. I really see a struggle for some people to feel entertained by black and white media. A popular article last year said that 30% of people under 50 had never watched a black and white movie in its entirety. And I cannot remember where I heard this, but I remember watching a recent video of some directors talking about how it essentially cuts your market in half if you decide to film a movie without color nowadays. I think many people will agree that you stop noticing there's no color when the story is engaging. People who automatically disregard films because of this are missing out on some of the most entertaining experiences ever captured on film. Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, and even 90s movies like Clerks, Schindler's List, and Pi. I mean, my point is, you shouldn't just say, well, it's old, it's black and white, and because of that, I won't watch it. I mean, there's so many things that make the Addams Family a great watch. The relationships feel genuine, even though there are quite a few supernatural elements. Many of the episodes revolved around one simple joke. The Addams Family are different than everyone else and don't realize it. There is usually a person who meets them in an episode, are shocked by how they act, while the family does not realize this concept, ultimately ending with the person fleeing in some way, while whatever conflict that had arisen has now ended, most likely due to people talking with Gomez or Morticia about how they are just slightly spooky, somewhat normal people. But there are some really heartwarming moments, like when the kids are ordered to start attending school, and Gomez doesn't want them to because he enjoys spending his time with them. But then you have these slightly more oddball episodes, like when Lurch ends up competing with a robot butler that Gomez built, or the episode where Gomez gets amnesia and becomes normal, or the one where Lurch becomes a pop star. Now, a lot of the episodes have an immense amount of the characters in one or two locations just talking to one another, but it's almost always very engaging. It really comes down to fantastic acting. John Astin as Gomez and Carolyn Jones as Morticia have such amazing chemistry. They really feel like a couple instead of just actors forced to play these roles. The two remained very close even after the show's end.
They did seem a bit nervous, but it's their wedding day.
I shook too, remember?
Yeah.
Jackie Coogan really threw himself into the role of Fester and has some of the best lines in the show.
Hey, Fingers! Just a little something to show you that I don't hold grudges. Gee, I was a beautiful baby.
Coogan had actually achieved some fame as a child, starring in Charlie Chaplin's The Kid in 1921, but he had somewhat fallen on harder times, with his entire fortune being spent by his mother and stepfather before he had the opportunity to enjoy it as an adult. He had been appearing on television, but the role of Fester really boosted him back into the spotlight. The 6'9" Ted Cassidy was so right for Lurch, and that is his real voice.
I quit. Gave away my kryptonite.
He had a very distinct baritone speaking voice, which actually led to a lot of voiceover work. Blossom Rock as Grandmama Addams always added that witchy touch with her cauldron.
What's the matter with Fester? He heard Abigail Adams was in town.
I guess the shock was too much for him.
You better try my remedy. It always ends as spells.
Lisa Loring as Wednesday and Ken Weatherwax as Pugsley aren't the main focus of a majority of episodes, but it's always hilarious to see how the family handles it. It's interesting to see that Wednesday is much sweeter than later depictions.
Would the nice young lady like a nice big strawberry ice cream cone?
No, sir.
Oh, what would you like?
A dead fly.
Fly?
Or my spider. He's hungry.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you.
Thing was actually played by multiple people, but most often by Ted Cassidy and Jack Vogelin. Without saying a word, you can tell exactly what he means. As for his appearance, he's sometimes left-handed and sometimes right. It depends on the scene. But it's mostly agreed upon that Thing is supposed to be right-handed. There are many extended family members, with the most frequent being the bundle of hair cousin It and Morticia's sister Ophelia, who is actually also played by Carolyn Jones, but in a blonde wig. We also get to see how Morticia and Gomez first met each other with the two-part episode Morticia's Romance. This is still one of my favorites. This was all.
Gomez.
Morticia,
Gomez.
Morticia.
Gomez.
Morticia.
Beautiful.
This was also the birth of the signature Addams Family theme song composed by Vic Mizzy, who did tons of composing for TV and film. It has been modified, re-recorded, and reused in almost every single version since the show. Apparently, the studio didn't want to pay singers to record the song, so Vic had to triple overdub himself to get the effect of a trio. It's what you immediately think of when the family is mentioned. It's the perfect blend of upbeat, creepy, and catchy. Many people, in fact, probably many of you watching this, know the show from its heavy use in spooky memes. I see these things fairly consistently when I browse Instagram or Tumblr, especially during Halloween. If you think those are funny, in the context of the show, they're even funnier. Getting to see the reactions from people are hilarious, and I rarely laugh out loud. I usually have a somewhat blank expression on my face when I watch most things, even comedies, but the Addams Family genuinely made me laugh out loud. I could go on and on about the things that make the show so timeless, but I'll go over some of my favorite moments and some interesting tidbits. Lurch is a fan favorite, and for good reason. His catchphrase is in almost every episode, and his distinctive, morose, and slightly aggressive butlering is hilarious. Just the way he grabs every hat is so memorable. He even had his own dance, called, very appropriately, The Lurch. The single released in October 1965, and are you cool enough to do the lurch? In flashbacks, we see that Morticia dressed like Wednesday when she was young. But when Morticia is trying to teach her daughter the ways of love, we get to see Wednesday dressed like her mother, which is pretty cool. The Addams Family broke ground in a lot of ways for television. They were the first family to own a computer, and the first married couple to have an implied sex life. And I mean, it's pretty heavily implied too.
French. It goes right through me. Speak some more.
Darling, we have company.
Just a few words. Soup du jour.
They have a number of pets. Kitty Cat the lion, Lucifer the lizard, Morticia's plant Cleopatra, Aristotle the octopus, Homer the spider, and there are many others that I'm not mentioning here, but it just goes on and on. Wednesday's middle name is actually Friday.
There's no time for jokes, huh? Now tell me who's missing and give me your address, please.
My name is Mrs. Addams, and I want you to find my little girl Wednesday.
Look, I'll find her Tuesday if I can, but don't give me no deadlines, will you, please?
Wednesday's her name.
Oh, and I suppose you're going to tell me her middle name is Thursday, huh?
Friday.
Now, come on, lady.
So Wednesday, Friday Addams. So, well, okay. Their home is located at 0001 Cemetery Lane. The special effects, while basic, are very charming and usually add to the hilarity. A lot of them are recurring, like Uncle Fester sliding down the fireman's pole and then sliding back up it, or his classic light bulb gag. And you could actually buy one for yourself back in the 1960s. And they actually, I think, relaunched them in the 90s too. Here's something you don't see anymore unless somebody's a villain or something. But Gomez smoked cigars all the time. And apparently John Astin's pocket was lined with asbestos so he could put the cigar out in his coat without it catching fire. Wow. Like most shows in the 1960s, there wasn't really a big finale. It ends with the episode Ophelia's Career, but was later continued in something I'll cover in a future episode. The show was a big hit at the time and spawned a lot of different merchandise, but it did struggle against the competing Munsters. At the time, the Munsters had higher ratings, but both shows ended in 1966. Through the advent of reruns, the show gained many fans over the years and still entertains viewers to this day. I actually think it holds up a bit better than the Munsters. I won't go too in depth right now, but the less traditional aspects of the Addams Family helped it age a bit better, whereas the Munsters had a slightly more, at the time, traditional dynamic to their family, even though they were monsters. If you're looking to watch the show, then you got a few different options. If you're in the USA, then you can watch it all on the service Hulu. Sometimes it shows up on Netflix, but at the moment I didn't see it. But as you know, I'm a person who appreciates a tangible copy I can rewatch whenever I want. So I recommend this DVD collection. It's got every episode, documentaries, commentaries, and obviously mine has seen a lot of wear over the years. I may not be a fan of double-sided DVDs, but this collection really is worth the price. There is a slight editing to 1 or 2 episodes, but it's nothing you're really going to notice. This won't be the last we see of this particular version of the family, but on the next episode, we'll be seeing them in a very different form.
And that is my review of the 1960s Addams Family television show. You know, I really was surprised at how well this held up. I would say that a majority of 1960s television is not entertaining or engaging to modern audiences, but I found myself really invested in these characters. And of course there's the familiarity, like I know about these characters. The acting really just made it way better than most of those old television shows. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and if any of this looked interesting, then I obviously recommend you going out and picking it up for yourself or finding it on Hulu or whatever it's streaming on at the moment. You never know inside a few months what it's going to be on. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And oh, by the way, did you know that that was not Carolyn Jones' hair? She wore a wig when she was Morticia. She did not have that long black hair. So one last trivia fact to blow your mind. Anyway, make sure to stay spooky.